Hey guys, so today we're going to look at the control flows. So we're going to start with if statement, if else statement, if else statement. Of course, we're using Golang. So when you're doing if else statement, of course, you have several options, but I'm just going to start by defining, let's say, a certain value. Let's define our variable. Let's define a variable called 18. Then we can say, so we have the if statement, we have the condition here. So the condition is going to be if age is maybe greater than 18. Then we can print and say you are an adult. So we can run this, then we can test it with several things. Now remember, nothing is being printed because age is not greater than 18. So let's say, for example, we say age is 19. Then we run this, we should be able to see you are an adult, and if we use anything less, it's not going to print anything. And that is where else statement comes in, whereby we come and say if that one is if you are greater than 18, and then we have us come and say otherwise if you are not, you are a child. You are a child. So that when we run this, so that we have entered a person who is 18 years, 10 years old, should be able to see you are a child. So that if this condition is not met, so if age is not greater than this one, else we're going to do that. So that's how you do a very simple if else statement. The next thing we can look at is if statement, but with short statement. Now this other one we consider to be the long approach. Another one you can just come and say, let's say if num, because if we use that approach, is going to cause errors because I'm going to redefine age. So I'm just going to use a value num, maybe num, and then we can come and say, instead of we define it first and then we do this, we can just do them here, so that if age is going to be 10, and then we can compile this, so that if that one, just say num if you divide by 2 and then the value is 0, of course that means it's going to be an even number. Just going to print this, and then we can come and say here num is even, and then we can just still copy this and say else num is odd. So we've defined this. So in short, this is the shorthand approach. For this one is the long approach, this is the shorthand approach. So you can still do that. Then we can run this and see 10 is even. But if we use a number like 9 and then we run this, it should be able to tell us that 9 is odd. So you can choose this approach. This is the long approach, this is the short hand approach. Then the next thing we can look at is switch statements. Switch statements, and then we have two approach here as well. We can define our value first. You can say maybe day equals to 3, and then we're going to switch day. Okay, so we are looking at different cases for the value of day, so that we can say the first case, say case 1, and then you're just going to paste this, and then I'm going to say Monday. Okay, just going to copy this for various cases. Case 2, what's going to be Tuesday. Case 3 is going to be Wednesday. Case 4 is going to be Thursday. Case 5 is going to be Friday. Case 6 is going to be Saturday. Then finally case 7 is going to be Sunday. And then we also have to have a default case so that if we don't find any of them, I'm just going to say here other day, or you can just say anything. So we have initially defined our day to be 3. When we run this, you should be able to see Wednesday, as you can see. So if we change it to 10, it should be able to print other day, or we can say maybe invalid day. And then when we run this, you should be able to see invalid day. So this is the first case whereby you can use switch statement. Another one, you can use switch statement but without any, it's like a multiple if else statement. So you can say maybe switch, you can just say a value of switch, because you can define a value. Let's define a value of score, maybe say 78, and then you're going to switch using that score. So that will say maybe case, maybe score is greater than maybe 50. We can maybe println this and say if the score is 50, we can say maybe grade C. And of course we can just copy this for multiple cases, and then we say if case maybe greater than 70, we can say maybe grade B, and then we can add another case, maybe greater than 80, we can say grade A. And then we can have a default case, and then we're going to do an fmt.println, and then we say invalid score, maybe something like that. And then we can try running this, and then we'll be able to see, since it's greater than 70, we're getting a grade greater than 50. Okay, grade C. Okay. Oh, sorry, it's supposed to start from the highest, so this should be greater than 80, so that we have grade A, and then greater than, maybe it should be greater than what? Greater than maybe 70, then we can say B, then greater than 50, then we can say C. I think this should work. Yes, grade B. So it should start from the highest to the lowest. I think this one doesn't matter as long as the case are well defined. Okay, so this is how you can use, another way you can use case, whereby you switch the cases. As you can see here, we defined and put it here, and you can proceed. So we can also look at for loops. Thanks to us, we have a format already in VS Code, so that we have for I this and count, then we can maybe fmt.println, you can just print count. They're saying it is undefined. Of course, we can define it up here and say count is equal to 5. Then we can just print count. So now we are going to print I, because we are looping through count. So you can just run this 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have for I equals to 0, I is less than 5. So starting from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, because it's less than 5. And then you keep on incrementing it. So you define your value here, you define your condition, and then you increment it here. You can also decrement it, of course. So that's how you define for loops. Another way you can use for loops is with range. For loops with range, whereby you can define, let's say, your values here, and you can define an array of integers. Then say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you can come here and say for I, because this stands for the index, and then the number. Then you're going to say range nums. So we can print fmt.println. Can print, of course, we start with you can print the index. This first value stands for the indexes of index this one, the 1, index dot 1, then the actual numbers. So you can say the index, which is going to be I, and then num. You can just call it num, which stands for num. Then we can print it out. So when you're looping using the range, you have to account for index. Sometimes when you see people putting dash, it's because you can just, if you don't want to use it anyway, you can just do that. So you can see here index 0, number 1, index 1, number 2. So this is index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is how you do for loops with indexes, that is with range. Another thing we can do is while loop. While loop, of course, you can define, let's say we define a value I, and then we can give it initial maybe 1, and then we can do for I less than or equal to 3. We're going to do an fmt.println, then we can print I, then we have to increment it. So what is going to happen is initial value of I is 1. So if I is 1, is 1 less than 3? Yes. Is 2? Blah, and then it just print on it, and then we keep on incrementing, so that it will print the first value, then increment the second value, then increment. But as it increments, it has to follow this condition. So this is how you do a very simple while loop. Of course, you can have an infinite value, an infinite loop, but we're going to do that. So these are some of the control statements. In our case, you can use if else statement using the shorthand approach. You can use the switch statements. You can do for loops. Of course, I know the for loops are the ones which are mostly used, and the if else statement in actual programming. So guys, for today I think we're going to just stop at that, and then I'll see you in the next video.